such as economics, such as education, such as medicine, such as the government and politics, entertainment, mass media, law. All of those types of characteristics that make up the society, Higginbotham would suggest, was ingrained in a very racist way toward African Americans and other ethnic groups in America, and that it still persists as we think about how culture is defined as something that is passed down from one generation to the next generation to the present time here in 2016 and ahead. Now, Alex de Tocqueville, a great French philosopher, came to America maybe 150 years or so after 1619. And what he found as he was traveling in horse and buggy throughout the South, these people of African descent that were enslaved. And as he looked at the very foundations of society, he said there's no way America could ever reach a democracy. Why? Because it was founded on slavery. So therefore, when we think in terms of it being so ingrained in our society, in order for us to make improvements on it, we must just understand that that's how this particular country and society was founded. Now, many people listening would say there's plenty of evidence that race relations has changed, and they're absolutely correct. You and I can remember when school segregation was very prevalent here in the United States. Some people might be able to look at a little age difference between us, but I was in a segregated type of a situation through the 8th grade. Many of the viewing audience might remember that. So the segregation took place, so we can see how there were certain improvements. We can look back at 244 years of enslavement in 1861 to 1865 with the Civil War, and after it ended, there was the Emancipation Proclamation. So 13th Amendment freed the slaves, the 14th Amendment, they gave a citizenship right, and the 15th Amendment gave the right to vote. Now, when we talk about Higginbotham's piece on it being so ingrained in the fabric, we're talking about 1866, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1865 was making the comment that people still do not have the fundamental right to vote in America. That's 100 years after the voting rights was given to slaves that were freed. So that's that notion of that. So we can see other possible improvements in race relations in America. The segregation is mentioned. We can see that we can drive any place from the East Coast to the West Coast, and if you want to get a place to live public accommodations are certainly free. You can speak and do anything that you want to, go into any store that you want to. We can even go as far as say now we actually have an African American president, and we can see representative on the Supreme Court, since that's such a topical issue. So there have been improvements. However, as we look at those improvements, we can also look at these disparities that I mentioned from my postdoc training through my PhD that are still very present, such as incarceration rates that you and I have talked about on the show many a times. Those disparities, if you look at Dr. McIntosh's piece, after slavery, that so many people of African descent were incarcerated and then sold out or given out to owners to make money. Presently, when you look at the incarceration rate, you still see a large amount and the highest percentage of African American males that are in prison. When you look back at an earlier time period in our history, you can see that people were fundamentally lynched and killed. Well, today you say, well, how does race is so much a part and ingrained in the very fabric? Good. When you see someone that may in that institution may have broken the law and someone is shot, that in the subconscious of that person, they still might shoot a person 14, 15 more times. Now, if you just think about, if you go hunting and if you shoot a deer or any animal, you might shoot them one time as a good shot, it's done. You don't think about shooting them 15 more times. So we can see how something within the subconscious really is still present within our society as an indicator. So in sociology, we have to have a very clear definition of race. And race is fundamentally defined as viewing someone's attitudes and beliefs of someone's physical characteristics, such as skin pigmentation, hair texture, those things that are just obvious, and a notion of inferior and superior ideas about those physical characteristics. Now again, how is that so ingrained from an earlier period and still very present within our culture today? Everything from commercials to what we see in mass media, and that doesn't mean that there haven't been many improvements made, but that's how race is fundamentally seen. Now, I'd be remiss to say how sociologists and anthropologists and other social sciences has indicated to us in the literature that race has really been not so characteristics on how it's been defined and placed in our American culture, but it's a social construct. Now, what does it mean by being a social construct? That means that historically, people have placed people into categories that really don't have any real meaning at all, such as Negroid, Caucasoid, and Mongoloid. And from that present quasi type of experiments that were done, people still have those feelings today through theory, and noted some of our primary sociologists and other social sciences out there have kind of instigated a racist type of theoretical framework that fits the social structure of America. But it's erroneous. We are much more human than the other types of characteristics such as hair texture, skin pigmentation. Let me give one real quick example of how if someone is from Australia and if their DNA or their blood type matches someone in an Igbo tribe of Africa, it can be used. If there's a physical part in a human being that now in our postmodernist technological stage of living that can be transferred for someone else's parts, it can be done. So we are much more alike than we are different. But however, here in the United States, from slavery to right now, it was socially constructed.